Well, hey, Zach.
Michael.
Have a important question.
Oh, I'm nervous.
For you. Yeah. Yesterday morning was the finale of the soccer season.
Oh, it was, yes.
And I don't know yet because we didn't, lots of times we talk about these things beforehand. I know that you had been undefeated up to this level. You may have won and had remained undefeated, but you may have taken an L. I don't know. How did it go?
Dominated. We won they did, actually it was much closest game of the season. It was 2-2 at one point. Then I think we won.
Were you feeling nervous?
I actually was. I was like, not our last game. It was like all of this. We won 7-2 or 8-2 that we didn't turn back after we got our footing. Good way to win the season. Undefeated.
That's good.
That's what it's all about,
Yeah.
And it was, it was good. So got another season.
And was Eli on your team or no?
No, no, he didn't play soccer this year.
Oh, he didn't.
He's playing basketball, but I guess soccer is not his what he loves.
His forte.
It's like Emerson.
It's his mezzo piano, not his forte.
That's right. I love that. That's good.
Okay. All right. Sweet. That was the only thing I had to ask you. I guess we could also talk about. I think this is it twice in a row? I don't think it's twice in a row, but twice that I've left my iPad on the way over here.
Yeah, that's
one time Chloe had to save us. Tonight I had to turn around and got it because I wasn't that far. But
man, that's the toughest part of podcasting is the commute with everything in Michael's car / so tough. And then the setup is a labor.
Yeah. Labor of love.
Labor of love. Can't wait till we get that podcast studio.
I know. Yeah. So we're looking at putting a lot of merch out there and getting some sponsors. So once we're rolling in we're rolling the money, then man, we'll just build. That's
why we got into podcasting. It's why we did it. For the money,
right?
Which, honestly, if we get enough money, I'd like to give away some of that profit as a teaser.
yeah. Give away profit. Maybe send the gospel out with it. Be beautiful feet.
I love it.
Yeah. That'd be good.
Man, I'll tell you. I will not name them. I don't know if you feel this too. There's one. This is all love. One family in our church that they've conditioned me. They have a particular avulsion to feet in a very strong way. Because I used to wear flip-flops all day.
I think I know. Is this family, if you wore flip-flops without socks, they'd be like, Zach, your dogs are hanging out. Yes.
I went up to them after the service, like the pastor for an attention getter, just for you guys, should have named the sermon, Who Let the Dogs Out? That would be great. It would only apply to a very small select group of people, but they would love that. Yeah.
I grew up, one of Jill's best friends was just like, I don't want to see feet. We would swim at a church camp or something, and everyone would be putting their feet up next to her, and she'd be like,
Yeah, and it's one of those things, it's not like I love feet.
Right.
But I'm fine with flip-flops.
Yeah.
It's normal.
I mean, you go to the beach, what are you going to do? You see feet.
We live in Charleston, South Carolina, and it's man, you just get just shamed. Any toes out. Leanne was wearing some sort of shit.
Well, let me ask you this. Is it possible that a future home group will be over their place? Is this
it's in the cards.
It's in the cards. So we should all show up with flip-flops and no socks, right?
And just be the feet are beautiful.
A planned thing.
That's great. Have a tract in one hand, have open-toed shoes, and just walk in and
that'd be good.
Beautiful feet.
That'd be good.
So I love it. Well, I think we're giving away what the sermon is, but that's good. That's what it's called. Just short and sweet. Beautiful feet.
There we go. Let's take it to the next level.
From the hearts of the Low Country in South Carolina,
it's the Take Two podcast, where we take theology to the next level.
Hobby Lobby.
Hobby Lobby. I mean, if you didn't already have a good reason to be spending your money there, we want to give you some more reasons to spend your money at Hobby Lobby.
And have you heard anyone anyone just speak ill, people actually maybe you hear some people online with politically driven, but outside of that, I've never heard everyone loves Hobby Lobby. I
think so, and it seems to be neater and better kept than my namesake, Michael's, because you go to Michael's and it's like
that's a disaster.
It is sometimes just a disaster in there. But Hobby Lobby is fairly clean. It's spacious. You feel like you can go in there and find stuff.
It rhymes. I like that. That's nice. Nice little touch.
Right.
I haven't been to Hobby Lobby in a while, but I know Leanne likes to venture in there from time to time. And everyone, Hobby Lobby.
Hobby Lobby.
Good reputation. Did you know their CEO when he said David Green?
I would not have put those two things together. David Green to me is a football coach at Northwood Academy.
Yeah, David Green. You'd be like, you're an 80-year-old CEO of Hobby Lobby. That would be surprising. Yeah, it's a pretty generic name.
Yeah.
David and Green. So I never know what to say because he put like the book up there and it was like by the CEO of Hobby Lobby. And he's like, how many of you know this? And I was like, well, I can't raise my hand because I didn't know it, but I'm looking at the slide.
Yeah.
And I know it. But David Green, CEO, very successful. And he's got 12 steps to success or something like that. We got a little.
I need like 1 or 2 steps to success.
And one of his steps was give away your profit, you know? He's got this quote here that says, God has blessed Hobby Lobby immensely, which we know is tied to our giving. Still, the Bible doesn't promise us more business success if we give more. At Hobby Lobby, we don't give more so we can get more. We get more so we can give more. We have come to experience the truth of Acts 20:35. It's more blessed to give than to receive. I think he said that really well, concisely, and captured it, because there's a lot of ways that could go wrong.
It's well packaged there. Yeah. And the point, I mean, obviously, it's always good when people, I say it's always good. I mean, I think you can teach giving so much that people are putting their family in harm's way.
Yeah, right.
But generally, if people are giving, and your average American family has more than what they need. But if you can teach, so I'm over caveating what I'm saying. But in general, it's good when you give your material, give some time and some treasure and talents to the church. But what's even better is when you give the gospel out to folks. And sometimes those times, talents, and treasure kind of what walk along beside the gospel. But Joe's main point was here is like, if Hobby Lobby is giving away some of their money, we should be giving away the gospel.
Absolutely. And that kind of frames this whole passage. Pastor, I like what he's doing. He does this a lot. He does this here. So he'll just like stop and do application. Then it's like applications kind of sprinkled throughout. He started at the beginning like, hey, this is an illustration to get us to grasp the main point even before we get into the text. So you can't walk away from this sermon being like, what was he talking about? Right. It's very, very apparent. And so just to, review where we are at, we are in Romans 10. We're in this section 9 through 11.
Our 30th sermon.
Wow.
In the book of Romans.
That's impressive. And we've come off a few sermons in the past, Romans chapter 9. Tough to hear a little bit sometimes, really leaning heavily into God's sovereignty. It can be emotional. We don't want to forget, the whole point of this is that verse 6 of 9. It's not as though the word of God has failed. And then we kind of turned a corner as we got into chapter 10, and the emphasis kind of changed. Talked a lot about human responsibility, and that's going to continue extensively today.
Yeah, yep. And so if you're looking at the beginning of chapter 10, it's going to start off talking about, the gospel. It's not a very complicated thing. It's pretty simple to understand, even though it can be offensive to our sinful, rebellious nature. So a lot of people are going to reject it. It's not a difficult message. And we talked about this stat again, about 85% of people saved 14 or younger before 15. You were before 15?
Yeah.
I'm in the
You're
15%. Yeah, 17.
Man. Can we get an updated pie chart? That looked like it was from Microsoft 1998.
Yeah, that pie chart was pretty old looking.
But the point was apparent,
right.
So so much so, and I know we've emphasized this with like Kids Connect and these other clubs we're doing. But D.L. Moody has this really, everyone knows D.L. Moody. Moody Bible Institute, big name. He says, if I could relive my life, I would devote my entire ministry to reaching children for God. Pretty strong statement, but that's if you're we're in an analytical culture. That's where the analytics are going to tell you to spend your time.
Yeah. I remember that talking about analytical culture. It's just a crazy rabbit trail.
Oh, yeah, I love it.
You know, the guy that took over for the Raiders like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yes.
And he was like, we're not doing any analytics. So it's like and he didn't do very well.
Did not do good. Was that Grudem or
Grudem?
Grudem.
Grudem.
He's
Not
a character.
Wayne. Not Wayne.
That would be amazing. Wayne Grudem like coaching football. Love it. So good. So we've been going through. We're in Romans 10, and we'll probably mention it, but it's just on my mind right now. We have that kind of confusing passage in a way where Paul writes, "Don't say in your heart, who will ascend into heaven or who will descend to the abyss." But what does it say? The word is near you. Exactly what you said. This is a simple message. It's staring you in the face. Don't overcomplicate it. It's not like you have to be searching everywhere for it. It's right here.
Yep. And it goes on to say that in verses 10 through 13, for the scripture says, whoever believes in him will not be disappointed. For there is no distinction between the Jew and the Greek, for the same Lord is Lord of all, abounding in riches for all who call on him. For whoever will call on the name of the Lord will be saved. So it's a simple gospel. You're not having to ascend to the heights or down to the depths, and it's for the whole world.
Wow. I love that a lot, and that leads seamlessly into where we're going to spend our time. Our text starts in verse 14. I'm going to read 14 through 17, probably passage most have heard before. Paul writes, how then will they call on him in whom they have not believed? How will they believe in him whom they have not heard? And how will they hear without a preacher? How will they preach unless they are sent? Just as it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news of good things. However, they did not all heed the good news, for Isaiah says, Lord, who has believed our report? So faith comes from hearing, and hearing by the word of Christ.
Yeah, it's a very simple, logical step. You can't call on if you don't believe it.
Makes sense.
You can't believe it if you haven't heard it.
Checks out.
You can't have heard it unless someone's told it to you.
Airtight logic.
It's pretty straightforward. And so, again, I think, for the hyper-Calvinist out there, we have a job to do.
Yeah.
You can camp in chapter 9 all day long, but here's chapter 10, and it's like, you need to go out there. You need to be the beautiful feet, telling people the gospel.
It's, we just went over. It's like Paul is like, he's not just saying bring the gospel. He's like, they can't believe it unless they. It's like he's like really laboring over these basic things. It's like I love how I think we've said this a lot. It's like it's hard to miss the point. Like you cannot read this paragraph and be like, Paul, what are you saying? It's like he's going slowly, breaking it out. And what Pastor does really well here is he pauses. And it's like, how can we apply this? He's probably thinking in his mind, you've all heard this before. I'm not like breaking news. Yeah. Let's like bring it to real life. And he starts, I thought this was really creative because I wouldn't come to my mind right away. Write a thank you note to the person who led you to the Lord or someone who had an instrumental impact. It's like that's a really good application to think back and thank that person because that is encouraging to them. And, people probably don't realize the impact they have or 20 years later, 30 years later. That was really cool.
Yeah, it's very good. Do you remember who? I'm guessing maybe your parents.
Yeah. So I remember my situation kind of came off of I can't remember if it was like a sermon or like it was some sort of meeting at our church in Kentucky. I was like 7 or 8. And that stuck with me. It was a sermon, is motivated by the fear aspect of things. Yeah. And then later that night, I couldn't sleep. Found my mom and dad. Mom led me to the Lord. So I was like, I should write my mom a letter. I should write my pastor from Kentucky. I should write him a letter. Like, I haven't heard of him in a long time because I lived in Kentucky for like 2 years as a kid, and we're moving around. So it's like, that would probably be really, really encouraging. And you don't have an excuse because there's a thank you card in the bulletin.
That's right.
He's making it easy.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good. So write a thank you note, and then we should be strategic and sacrificial in our sending of the gospel, whether that's local, regional, across the globe. All three of those play. If you're not in, you should be local. If you're not, local. If you're not global, you can at least be local and be sending those types of things. And I like, when we talk about preaching, same word we use for heralding. Yeah. And we got to hear Joel being like, extra, read all about it. But it's, just like a newsboy, we should be, trying to get that message out there.
Yeah, I like that envisioning this heralding of good news. You can even think about, the time of Paul, time of Christ, people are proclaiming like victory over war. You can understand why, Caesar might be a little threatened with this heralding, because I think that was a thing that happened in those days too. You would herald Caesar and these kind of things. And then the last application, we've done this several times in the past, and it's good because it's simple, easy to remember. Call it a 3-2-1. Find 3 people. Typically do this around the holiday season to pray for. Maybe neighbors, maybe coworkers, whoever they might be. Out of those 3, pick 2 to serve in some way. Do a good deed, bake them a cake, I don't know, walk their dog. I don't know, probably ask them before just
what are you doing with our dog? Oh, just walking your dog.
Just trying to do a good deed. And then
cleaning your house.
get consent before you do these good deeds. And then the last one is either witness to them or invite them to, our church specifically for a Thanksgiving celebration we're having, Christmas. Right. We're gonna have a choir, whatever, but to be intentional and think about these things. Great way to put this kind of message into practice.
That's great. Got another D.L. Moody quote here. He says, in Proverbs we read, "He that winneth," he must have been in that Old English, Old English Bible, the KJV. "He that winneth souls is wise. If any man, woman, or child, by a godly life and example, can win one soul to God, his life will not have been a failure. He will have outshone all the mighty men of his day, because he will have set a stream in motion that will flow on and on forever and ever." Just this beautiful picture of the impact that bringing one person to Christ can have, and that person is going to have an impact, and that person is going to have an impact, just like a ripple is just spreading out.
Yeah, don't underestimate that. And Pastor broke it down into someone gets married and has kids, and even that alone, just think of that's pretty amazing. So that's Romans 10:14-17. We'll continue on. Verses 16 and 17, Paul writes, "However, they did not all heed the good news. For Isaiah says, 'Lord, who has believed our report?' So faith comes from hearing, and hearing by the word of Christ." Also familiar text.
Yeah. And so there's folks here that believe. There's folks here that did not believe. And this reminded me, Joel didn't go to this, but when Paul is on Mars Hill at the Areopagus, and he is given his sermon, this is what you read, Acts 17:32-34. "Now when they heard of the resurrection of the dead, some began to sneer. But others said, 'We shall hear you again concerning this.' So Paul went out of their midst. But some men joined him and believed, among whom also were Dionysius, the Areopagite, and a woman named Damaris, and others with them." So you see kind of these 3 different responses. Some ridiculed him. Some are like, this is interesting. We don't know if we want to commit yet, but we'd like to hear some more. And then some fully believed. That's kind of what you see when you give the gospel.
And that's what Paul is saying here. We'll kind of, he's quoting Isaiah a lot. Pastor Joel mentioned this point, but particularly through 9, really throughout all of Romans, but 9-11, a lot of Old Testament quotes. He's addressing ethnic Jews. He's trying to show them that this is in your. I'm not making this up.
Yeah.
And some of his quotations have come from Isaiah 51. Here's verses 1-3 in the New American Standard. Isaiah writes, "Who has believed our message? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a root out of a parched ground. He has no stately form or majesty that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we should be attracted to him. He was despised and forsaken of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And like one from whom men hide their face, he was despised, and we did not esteem him." So when this question is asked, who has believed our message, it's saying like, who? Because there's people that have totally rejected it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so some rejected, some believed. And then you kind of start asking, well, why did they reject it? So you could kind of hear someone saying, Paul, why did some reject? And so Paul's going to go through some of the options. So when we look at 10:18-21 from Romans, Paul's going to say, it's not because they haven't heard. That's what verse 18 says. But I say, surely they have never heard, have they? Indeed they have. Their voice has gone out into all the earth, and their words to the ends of the world. And I found this interesting. I don't know, like I have quoted Psalm 19 a lot, but I never connected till this morning. Oh, Paul is quoting Psalm 19 here, and it's talking about creation and the heavens declaring the glory of the Lord. and their speech pouring forth night after night is going out to all the world. Does it use words? No, but it's heard by everyone. And that is an astounding evidence of who God is and what he's like. And there's evidence that he's there. Now, do we respond properly? No, we don't always.
That's amazing because no one, we learned this in Romans 1 anyway, but just rehashing it here is probably where, Paul's drawing a line. It's like everyone has heard there is no excuse, and it's not like Paul is saying, well, creation's enough. Like he went to the synagogues.
Right.
We mentioned that's where he started his ministry. So I love that he's going through these different objections because you could see a Jew being like, well, maybe all of us haven't heard it. It's like, no, you have heard. Not only that, it's not because you haven't understood either. In verses 19 through 20, he writes, but I say, surely Isaiah didn't know, did they? I'm sorry, surely Israel didn't know, did they? First, Moses says, I'll make you jealous by that which is not a nation. By a nation without understanding will I anger you. And Isaiah is very bold and says, I was found by those who didn't seek me. I became manifest to those who did not ask for me. And he kind of breaks it down. And New Living Translation kind of reads between the lines a little bit or tries to break it down. But he's basically saying, you've understood this.
Right.
Like they probably have had more understanding or with scriptures and all of this that really you have not sought me like like Gentiles have sought me.
Right. Yeah. And the fact that he's going to use Gentiles who are kind of new to all this. Like you had greater understanding.
That's right.
You were you had the prophecies, you had the law, you had the covenants. I told you, back in the Pentateuch that, her seed was going to, bruise the head of the serpent. I told you through Abraham that, you were going to be a blessing to all nations. I told David he's going to have a son who reigns forever. I told you through Isaiah. So all of these things the Jews should have known, and yet they didn't see it. And now he's going to take Gentiles and use them kind of as a way to make the Jews jealous to help bring some of them back.
That's really good. So it's not because the Jews haven't heard, they've rejected the message. It's not because they haven't understood. Then the third point, it really gets to the heart of it. Probably not what a Jew is wanting to hear, but it's because
if you're witnessing, this may not be the first thing that you lead with.
They are disobedient and obstinate. Verse 21 says, but as for Israel, he says, all the day long I have stretched out my hands to a disobedient and obstinate people. And to your point, Michael, they had all these things. They had the temple. They had things that that all these other nations did not have. And really, that's God's patience and kindness, and he is just being rejected. This image of, my hand is stretched out to you. You're the one not accepting.
Yep. Yeah, and so this is part of the message. The message, if you've read it, it just is like, it doesn't give you exact verses because it's so paraphrased. But so this is kind of some of the last verses that we've read. I think it kind of goes up into 18 and 20. But it says, Isaiah dared to speak out these words of God. People found and welcomed me who never so much as looked for me. And I found and welcomed people who had never even asked about me. Then he capped it with a damning indictment. Day after day after day, I beckoned Israel with open arms and got nothing for my trouble but cold shoulders and icy stares. Clearly a paraphrase, but he's trying to capture, what these last verses have been saying.
No, that's good. And Pastor Joel's got this great illustration to drive it home. They're all the rage the last 5 or 10 years or whatever, these gender reveal parties. Yeah. You did not. Did you do one for Phoebe?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, because we don't know until the day we don't find out.
It's I'm in the same boat. The gender reveal parties we do are not open to the public.
Yes, that's right. All right.
But everyone does them. It seems like he was mentioning, his granddaughter, for what gender she was going to be to reveal all these things. And then you can go online and there's a million things, if you can imagine, that did not go well. And from a tree catching on fire, all these, I don't know if I'm missing any. And then he gets to his main point.
Right. Yeah. So I think he mentioned one sister who was upset with getting a brother and then a dad, this is really bad. Being upset that it's a girl instead of a boy. I guess there's a video out there.
Yeah, but he didn't say it. It actually was Michael. He didn't want to bring it up. I'm just kidding.
Well, I think that is one of the beauty things because obviously we were planning on having 2 girls, 2 boys at least. Keep on having kids so we have at least 2 of each, and then everyone can have a sister, everyone can have a brother. Well, Everyone has a sister.
Got halfway there. Yeah, that's right.
And no one has a brother. But yeah, so I think not finding out is great because, that day of, you see that baby.
Yes, that's right.
You just love him or her immediately, so. But those big reveals, they went bad. Jesus Christ, much lesser to the much greater. He was a big reveal. Walked onto the stage of humanity, showed up, declared who he was, but most of the Jews were not happy with this reveal.
Not loving it so much that they stumbled over him. Like again, it's not like who was Jesus? We had no idea. We didn't know. We didn't understand everything. It's a lot of it was disobedient, obstinate stubbornness. John Stott's got this quote, and he says, "So Paul concludes his second exploration into the unbelief of Israel. In chapter 9, he attributed it to God's purpose of election, on account of which many were passed by, and only a remnant was left, an Israel within Israel. In chapter 10, however, he attributes it to Israel's own disobedience. Their fall was their fault. The antinomy between divine sovereignty and human responsibility remains." I like that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So we talk about, was it, I think it was Moody quoting Spurgeon, or it was like a double quotation, but one of them's like, I never try to reconcile friends.
That's good.
And then this one says, I like this one because the antinomy, it recognizes there's some tension there.
Yeah, that's right.
That the Bible doesn't necessarily seek to resolve. Like we try to, pull up some ways of understanding it, but ultimately, God's sovereign, man's responsible.
Yeah, that is good. Pastor Joel's going to close it out with another application, encouraging us to pray for, look for, and act on opportunities to have beautiful feet as we come into the holiday season. Consider yourself sent. How beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news of good things. And, if you're thinking about this, if you're trying to get a picture, it's funny because it's beautiful feet, but what do these feet look like? Yeah. Probably callous, dusty, dirty. Right. They're doing work, right? So you have like this paradox or contrast or, this image. Those are what beautiful feet aren't necessarily kicking your feet up and you're getting the pedicure or whatever,
right.
It's like all...
They're beautiful for what they've done, not their view. Yeah.
No, that's good. So, get
comfortable with feet.
That's right. Yeah. That is good. Anything else on Romans 10? Romans 10's in the books.
Romans 10 is in the books.
It's in the book.
It's in the book, the big book. Looking at Romans 11 coming up. Don't get too haughty, Gentiles.
That's right, because that would be the natural. Yeah. I love how Paul ain't playing favorites. He's telling it how it is, and he's calling things out, and that's right. Gentiles, watch out.
Grafted in. So, I mean, we could stream this on for another 30 minutes, talk about what that means. But I've always wondered, because we grew up with some very hardline dispensationalists.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Where is Paul? Is he in the church or is he in Jews? I don't know. If you take a very hardline dispensationalist view. Where's Peter? Church or the Jew? But I think Romans 11 makes that clear that Gentiles are grafted into that tree, and the church in Ephesians will talk about bringing down that dividing wall so that there's one organism that we call the church, which is the blending of spiritual Israel and with national Jews and Gentiles who believe.
But that's good.
Little preview.
Little preview. Yeah, I love it. Sounds good. Next time, the 31st chapter. So we'll see y'all then. That's our take. Thanks for listening to Take 2. Find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube for those who want to watch our videocast.